What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Listening Game Podcast. This is, what is this? This is episode 4. I'm really excited that we're getting a chance to continue this past the first 3 pilot episodes. It's been awesome. Thank you for all the great feedback and the comments on YouTube. I've really enjoyed it. And of course, if there is anyone you'd like to see as a guest on this podcast, please do let me know. Or if you have any suggestions or feedback, don't hesitate to hit us up. I do have an email address, info@harkeninteractive.com. You can hit me up there. Or of course, comment on the YouTube videos themselves. Please do like and subscribe, of course, and share this stuff around. I'm very excited to continue dev conversations. So let's jump into this week's. Guys, I'm really excited. This man is someone who has incredibly impressed me over the course of this past year. I met him for the first time, I would say April or so last year. His name is Jon Jelinek, and he is the general manager of Nexon OC. Jon, thank you so much for joining me on this crazy podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. Absolute pleasure.
I probably owe the audience a little bit of an explanation on how I met you. Okay. So I'm going to give that quick story, and we'll dive into a little bit of your background. But I met Jon when I started asking the question, what does it take to start a studio? I was very interested in that idea early this year as I began to think about what would be next for me in the wake of my time at Blizzard. And I started meeting with studios all around Orange County. And of course, Jon was someone people kept saying, you really should talk to Jon Jelinek, Jon Jelinek, Jon Jelinek. And I'm like, okay, got to reach out to this guy. So I reach out, and sure enough, he agrees. We have dinner, and man, my mind was blown. And as you know, Jon, I've sung your praises to you, but
Too kind, yeah.
No. I've been incredibly impressed. Jon strikes me as someone who has a mind for game development that is very wide-ranging. Making games is hyper complex, as we've talked about, and I'm sure many of you are aware. But very rarely do you find a single individual who has sort of the extent of that complexity wrapped into their brain across the board at all angles. And I truly feel like Jon has really impressed me as someone uniquely capable of that. He showed up with this black book.
Oh yeah, the portfolio.
This black book of game dev, and kind of blew my mind. Models for everything. Really just a framework for how to consider developing games and doing that successfully, doing it on budget and on time. So anyways, Jon, I'm really grateful that you're here with me on the podcast, and I'm excited to hear more of your story and how you became the man that you are today, who I really think is someone hyper capable of making very complex, collaborative, and creative projects. So,
well, thank you. Would you like for me maybe to go from the background of how I got into the industry until now, perhaps?
Dude, I would love it. I would love to hear starting at the very beginning. How did it all start? Why video games? Because there's so many other possibilities for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess for why video games, that was just luck. Someone just happened to say there's this company called Blizzard Entertainment. You might be interested in them. And I was like, okay, they sound like a great company. I played Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 2 and StarCraft 2, so I was absolutely into it. So I said, okay, I'm a web developer. I'll try to do some web designs for them. Spent, 20 hours a day, 8 days a week. I was able to pull all that together. Got very lucky. Got into Blizzard as my first job in the industry.
Yeah, what year was that, by the way, if you had to?
Yeah, that was 2003.
Okay, so this is all pre-World of Warcraft?
Pre-World of Warcraft. In fact, the very, very first thing that I had to do was go through red lines for the World of Warcraft Alpha Terms of Service, I believe it was, or EULA.
Ah, interesting.
And so that was the very, very first thing that I did while I was at the company. So I was there just pre-World of Warcraft. It was a very interesting time. If I remember right, it was around 300 or 400 employees. I was the 4th person on the web team. I was the 2nd web developer.
Wow.
So I started there. I guess the main big thing I did there was 2 projects. One was called StarCraft Ghost, and another one was called World of Warcraft, obviously. So I worked a lot on the StarCraft Ghost site. That unfortunately went away. And then did one of the main designs for the original World of Warcraft websites as well. So spent a couple years doing web development at Blizzard. Had the wonderful opportunity, Shane DeBeery and Jeff Kaplan talked to me about an opportunity on World of Warcraft.
Awesome.
Joined World of Warcraft as a technical artist. Very crazy time. They just said, can you write 3D Max script or programming? And I said, Not really, but I can learn.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Wow.
they were fortunate enough to allow me to learn there. So I was a technical artist for, I believe, I can't remember, but I believe it was about 3 years, and wrote a lot of tools, helped save the company a lot of money and be a little bit more efficient. And then during my downtime, I'd learn to paint. So I would look at other artists' work and try to figure out how to learn how to paint and do painting. And through that, I then became a prop artist on World of Warcraft.
What are some props that you worked on? I'm just curious, especially in the age of WoW Classic right now. Are there?
Oh, there's not as many in WoW Classic. A lot in Burning Crusade.
Okay, gotcha.
Cataclysm is probably the largest amount. So
interesting.
The
Okay.
Worgen area and the Goblin, the Worgen starting area and the Goblin starting area is probably where you could throw a rock and hit something that I was.
So that art stuff was a little bit later in your time at Blizzard.
Yes,
after WoW launch and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the vanilla stuff was all technical art. So
Gotcha,
it was all about how do you make artists more efficient.
Sure.
So for example, the way that they would cut up maps would take them up to a week, and so I wrote a tool that would get that down to a matter of seconds or minutes. So I would write up different tools and create different processes and procedures to optimize game development.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal job for learning, how do people build things, how should people build things, and how can we try to figure out a more optimal solution.
Yeah, shout out to all the tech artists out there. You guys are amazing, and you make game development so much more efficient. So awesome.
Yes, definitely a shout out to technical artists. It's one of my favorite unsung heroes behind the scenes, just making things work. And then as a prop artist, I started some of the training and development stuff at Blizzard. So started with figure drawing, artist training videos, got a bunch of Gnomon videos, and then I'd run kind of a training and development course where we would have really amazing artists like Sammy or Glenn Rain or whoever would come in, and they would do paintings, or we'd give a little class. People would go off and do homework. We'd come back. We'd talk about it. So started some of the things that eventually evolved. I think today is way cooler and pretty amazing. The Blizzard Academy, I think, is what it's called.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I was pre all that, but started some of those things.
You know what? I just realized that.
Oh, please.
Oh no, it is on. Okay, cool. Sorry, I just wanted to double check that the camera was running.
Oh yeah.
I didn't see the red light because the cord was in the way. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, let's keep.
No worries. So there's some of the Blizzard Academy stuff. That was when I was doing the prop art things. Then a very exciting opportunity came up for working at NCSoft as a lead 3D artist. So I was a lead 3D artist of, at its height, I want to say it was 10 prop artists. Later on there'll be 12 roughly production people. So I was in charge of that. We made over a couple thousand assets for the game.
Which game was this?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's for the game. The game's for Wildstar.
Wildstar, correct?
Yeah,
yes,
Wildstar.
we're going to talk about Wildstar. This will be another chapter as we get through your career. But
yeah, and we can.
Let's keep going though. So you joined NCSoft. By the way, was it the opportunity that caused you to leave Blizzard, or was there anything else? I'm just more curious there.
There was more there. I think that I would say one of the things that I derive a tremendous amount of value from is helping and growing people and helping others.
Right.
There was probably my time at Blizzard, that would have taken a lot longer to accomplish some of those goals.
Right.
And so to move to NCSoft is not a small organization, but Wildstar, the subsidiary, or Carbine, the subsidiary, was smaller, so there was more opportunities there.
Right.
And so that was a very exciting thing for me, and that opportunity was something that I was very interested in. Part of being a technical artist, or part of me doing some of the training and development things that I've derived a lot of value from, was empowering people to empower themselves and to help them solve problems that allowed them to reach their potential.
Sure.
I derive a lot more joy from that than I do sitting down and creating just one thing for myself or to make a smaller impact. So most important thing for me, what is the greatest impact I can deliver? I felt like at NCSoft or at Carbine, I could have been a big fish in a small pond versus maybe a medium fish in a huge pond.
Right. Totally got it.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on to NCSoft and Carbine, I do want to ask you a little bit about early Blizzard.
Sure.
It's such an interesting time, I think, in the minds of gamers and audiences. It's such a monumentous time in some ways, the birth of World of Warcraft and all of that. Can you take us back and describe what that was like? What was the situation like in terms of the launch of Vanilla WoW? Was it a lot of crunch? Was it high stress? What was the team culture like? Can you Can you talk about it?
I'll do my best. It's a very long time ago, but for the original launch of World of Warcraft, I was an associate, maybe even assistant, I don't remember a title, like web designer.
Yeah.
So I saw the world from just one step outside of the dev team. However, being only one of 2 web designers, I'd find myself often working 16, 18 hours a day. There was just a deluge of work. Not only that, but there was also still Warcraft 3, which was live at the time. So I was working very, very crazy hours, but I loved every single second of it. In fact, no one asked me to. You just couldn't peel me away from my desk. I absolutely loved it. At the same time, we started hiring a massive amount of what do you call GMs? Game masters.
Yeah, for sure.
So like hired customer service side, and there was just this explosive amount of growth. And then I think I didn't really notice what was going on upstairs until a large number of the World of Warcraft team left. So they had been crunching for a very long time to get the project out, and a large number of them had left actually to go form Carbine Studios.
Right, so this was the seed of those individuals that you would eventually go and join.
Many years later.
Right.
And so the opportunity for me to actually join the true World of Warcraft team, the core dev team, came out of the technical artists and a lot of animators leaving the team.
Interesting. Do you know? Can you talk a little bit about why they left? Was it just the high stress situation you feel, or desire to maybe test their own limits outside? Like, what was it?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, you're kind of speaking for other people.
I don't want to speak too much for them. I think every individual is a little bit different. But I think that for a lot of individuals, when they go through such a long period of prolonged work, and they've kind of put that work in, expectations for what the future will be might not always line up with what the reality of that could be. So some people might have wanted to do different decisions on WoW, or they might have had different expectations of what bonuses might look like, or some people might have had different expectations of what work-life balance looked like. I think whatever that was for each one of those individuals, there became a culture that was ripe for people to go seek new opportunities. And that founded Red 5 Studios, that founded Carbine Studios. I think there was like a couple others that actually were founded as well during that time. And so the World of Warcraft team, while having this phenomenal amount of success, was also going through this exceptionally challenging time. I believe Mark Kern, who was one of the executive producers, had left to go form Red 5. You had a lot of the very senior artists, like the art team, who left to go found Carbine Studios along with some of the designers. So that was just such an interesting time. But to me, as somebody new, as an associate, I had none of that grizzled feeling. I was wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, so I was like, sure, I'll learn more 3D math, and I'll learn MaxScript, and I'll learn these things. This is amazing. This is awesome. And there's also this entire new generation of people being hired. So even though I would say it's like you're shedding a certain amount of, baggage for both groups, both the people who left and for the company, and there's all these new and excited people who are coming in wanting to know how can they contribute to something that's great and will continue to grow and be great even till today.
Dude, for sure. Yeah, what an incredible game. And even amidst all of those changes, which truly can disrupt your team and shake confidence and all those things, it's interesting that the product that remains is still just so brilliant in so many ways, and really a marked test of quality. And
to Jeff and to Shane, to keep it together, like when I joined, there was no animators. There was zero animators. The whole animation team had left.
Wow.
And to kind of keep all that together and to rebuild and to build a team that was amazing to work on, full of talented professionals, and was able to still get the next product out the door, Burning Crusade. To pull it together. Justin Thavarat, another shout out if he's out there. But
he's out there.
It was absolutely incredible. Actually, Justin was another person who convinced me to join that team, or talked to me about joining that team. And it was one of the most beautiful things to happen in my career. So, through their hard work and dedication, they kept it going. And I think if they didn't have that, it could have easily all fallen. So
dude, awesome. So you transition on to WoW, you work on props for WoW, but then so let's dig into this, your departure. How many years was it after the core group left that you then decided to leave as well? It's a couple years?
I want to say 4 or 5.
Okay.
Because I was a technical artist. I joined because that core group left. I then became the technical artist, so about 5 years later. So Carbine was well established and on its way by this time.
And was that was your desire to go not just because you maybe knew those guys from early on, or was it just completely new horizons?
It was completely new horizons. There were some challenges that I was experiencing on the WoW team. And so I would say, where I normally wouldn't have been open to something, when I had the opportunity to meet with the art director of Carbine Studios, was a really good friend of mine, amazing artist, amazing manager. He just said, hey, I want to show you some stuff. And I was like, I'm not sure if I'm interested. He's like, I just want to show you. I went in and he showed me this beautiful tree that they were working on. And, as a prop artist, I was like, that looks incredible. The art style looks amazing. Yes. Awesome, so I went in half open, and after just meeting with him for a little bit, I was fully open.
This is Corey? Was this Corey Loftus? Or
No. Corey Loftus was the lead concept artist at the time. Also, and a brilliant artist. Now I believe he still works. I think he's still working at Disney.
Yeah, he's at Disney,
art director of Zootopia. Totally. A lot of really amazing stuff. So,
yeah.
And it was a lot of the style that he helped develop. The art director was Matt Makarsky. He's the gentleman who hired me. But Corey Loftus was him and his team were generating all the concepts, so that was what we'd build stuff off of. And I had seen nothing from them at that point. And I saw the work that was being created, and I was like, "This is absolutely beautiful." It's similar to what we were doing on WoW, but it's using newer technology, some more shaders, normal maps, some things I'm really interested in learning and growing and building, and it's achieving a very unique, closer to a Pixar-esque style. So I was absolutely in love with it, and it's really hard because I did love the WoW team and I loved a lot of the people there, but at the same time I felt like it was such an exciting opportunity that I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah. Let's dig into Wildstar and Carbine more in detail now, because I know there's so many Wildstar fans out there, myself included. I really enjoyed that game. This is a massive chapter in your career, as I know as well. So yeah, take me through what the company was like leading up to, pre-launch and then launch, and what was the company culture like, especially as it related to Blizzard? Were there distinct differences? Walk me through it.
Okay, I'll do my best. I would say that for the 5 years prior to I got there, I believe there was 2 different versions of the IP. So the IP had gone through a reboot. I believe it was twice. One called Sanctuary, then one called Influx, and I think there might have been one more in between that. And so I joined at what the game was called Influx, and there was this idea of like alternate realities and alternate worlds. The company was made up of some really interesting industry veterans, like Tim Kaine and of course Matt Makarsky, Corey Loftus. Well, he's now a veteran. He was actually very new then. And they had done some really interesting stuff, but it wasn't really pulled together into what the final game could be, because they were building an engine on top of building the design, on top of building the art, and they were trying to figure out, what would this be? Are we just making WoW, or are we making something new and different and unique? And the team that I had taken over for was, having some challenges, and so my job was to try to make them operationally consistent. And they were good artists, but how do I make sure they can deliver consistent, high quality results every time? And so that was what I was brought in to help them with for those couple of years, and then went through another reboot. Where it was no longer Influx, and then that is what became what was the final game, Wildstar. And so that happened, I want to say a year and a half in while I was there, and I was not too much part of that decision, of why that decision was made, but it was made, and I thought it was a good idea, and I was like, sure, we can change a couple of the assets to work this way.
So you don't recall necessarily what the distinct core differences were between Influx and Wildstar that the change needed to get made, or
I don't remember the distinct reason why it needed to be made, but I remember that, and if I had to guess, it had a lot to do with like content creation and fantasy, and like what are we trying to go for. From what I heard back in the day, there was like somebody who said, you guys need a unique hook, and they made a recommendation, and that hook ended up being, hey, we have this alternate reality of the Flux.
I see.
After that individual left, I think my assumption is that the leaders decided, hey, we believe we have enough here in this core world and this core fantasy to really sell the idea of what we're trying to accomplish without adding on this additional alternate reality to accomplish these things. By the way, that's a guess. You have to talk to the creative director or some other folks to get a better answer there.
Get them on here too. So now this is 5 years into Carbine's life, or 5 plus, right? So
Wildstar, being called Wildstar, was about almost 7, I think.
7. And was there anything in the back of your mind at that point, in regards to the project and the team or whatever, that sort of felt like, wow, 7 years of cranking away at this,
that's a long
and
time.
still, kind of nothing really, like even the core conceit is still something people are kind of battling over. Was there ever any sort of foreboding feeling about that at all, or?
Not for me, but I would say definitely for some individuals, I would say that I thought it was kind of crazy, but I love the job.
Sure.
I love the job, I love the people, and I felt like it was worth every single ounce of my passion and desire and time. But I think, for certain individuals, it was probably very challenging going so long without launching a game. I mean, we work in an industry where the mobile side can be launching games in months. And then if you go into a lot of the console world, it's in a few years. And then when you go into MMOs, you're talking, many, many, many years, because you're building such large and immersive worlds. So I think it was very challenging for a lot of people, and concerning because no one knew exactly where the end was at that point. The goalpost kept moving a little bit because you get a little further and then you'd learn a little more about what you didn't know. I think for the publishing side, they were definitely in a situation where they were like, okay, we thought it was going to be 5, we thought it was going to be 6, we thought it was going to be 7. Wait, is it 8?
Right.
Is it 9? Like, what is it? So it's a very challenging situation.
Wow. Okay, so Wildstar is Wildstar now. Walk me through the rest,
Through the rest. So built a team of prop artists. I believe it was from 5 to either 8 or 9. A lot of them were junior or associate or mid-level. We trained them up. I think we trained them up really well, because we ended up finishing all of our work about 8 months ahead of what we thought we would take. We started taking on character work, world work, effects, animation, whatever we could take on. Of course, we didn't do it as well as those professionals did, but we would take on additional work. We were hyper organized. We pretty much delivered very consistently, on time, on budget, very consistent, and super organized. I'd make sure our JIRAs were set up correctly, wrote tools to audit things, make sure everything was structured and clean and done. Everything was just getting done. And that opened up an opportunity for me in a conversation with the president of studio, Jeremy Gaffney, who I believe you met. And the opportunity came up that I was able to step into a new role as the development director for Wildstar.
It seems like a big leap. I don't want to just I don't want to just jump over that because it's funny. I would talk to Trevor Jacobs about you after I initially met you, and he was like, "Yeah, that guy. That guy went from like working on art assets to all of a sudden directing development on behalf of like a large-scale major MMO. Like, this is a big deal. I want to hear a little bit about why. Like, why did that happen with you? And what was it about what you were doing that was so unique? I'm gonna turn this off. I just realized that.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Turn this off before it takes up all my phone battery.
I think the first thing I would say is there's obviously something a little bit crazy about everybody for believing that I could do it. I think so. I think that for whatever reason, a few of the directors, particularly the design director and the art director, were very confident that I was the right person to step in. And in my conversation with the president of the studio, he said, how would you break it down? And I just tried to explain to him how I would break down the challenges and the problems, and then try to figure out how to start solving some of those problems. And for whatever kind and generous reason, he thought that would be a decent fit, and he gave me that opportunity. And I remember the first thing I did, I was like, okay, so when do we think we're going to launch? They told me the date, and I said, okay, where is localization? Right. By the way, I've never done local.
I'm sure all of this was new to you. Like all of a sudden, hey, here are the reins.
But I knew enough.
Make an MMO.
But I knew enough from being a technical artist to know where the tails of the pipeline are. I knew they were audio. I knew they were localization. So I knew enough about the pipeline of how game development works to go start working backwards. And there was a lot of people who really doubted me and doubted my ability to be able to understand and break that down.
Right.
Even the publisher was concerned about that. My first meeting with a bunch of the chiefs was, "Hey, you were an artist, and now you think you're a producer. Why should I trust that? Why should I believe that?" And I think from my perspective, I was like, "You shouldn't. I need to show it."
Dude, I love that about you, John. I love that about you, man. You're just like, I get it. Give me some time. I'll prove it to you.
Yeah, no, that was pretty much it. It was like, my actions and my ethic and my communication and, have to speak for themselves. And the results have to speak for themselves. You don't see results, get rid of me, please. I don't have no ill will. This is $1 million education for me. I'm going to take every single moment of it to do the best job that I can. And that's all I can do. I'll do my best. I'll forget the rest. So, funny for Trevor to say that. Yeah, it is crazy. It is very crazy because the directors, because this is a leapfrog, right? The directors promoted me along with Jeremy Gaffney to be their boss. Yeah. So I was over top of all the directors of the organization as well as the production staff. The production staff all sat in different corners of the company, and they all had slightly different methods of how they wanted to do their work and how they wanted to measure success. And so I was like, okay, this is going to change immediately. And I said, everyone must sit in one area. We're going to come up with consistent ways to track, measure, and understand where every single thing is with this game. The second week into the job, I think it was, one of the only senior producer came up to me and said, I'm quitting. I don't think you have anything to teach me. So I'm going to leave. And I said, I understand. I can't blame you for it. Can't fault you for it. I wish you good luck at Riot. Enjoy.
Yeah. Where was the game at this point, by the way? Like, was the game live at this point, or was it?
No. Okay. This is 2 years before launch, and my job is to launch the game.
I see. Okay.
So
pressure is on.
The pressure is absolutely on. They're in a very serious situation where, the game has been going on for a very long time, and the cost of the project is starting to maybe exceed the comfort of, what its potential returns can be, the return on the investment. And so how do we, finish, or how do we complete this project was my number one thing. And step one is, how close are we?
Right.
We think it's out here. We think it's at, next year. Is that true? Is that not true? How do we measure it? How do we fully understand that whole picture? And that's what I really had to understand, which meant breaking everything down into its simplest parts, interview every single employee, say like every lead, hey, what work are you responsible for? How much do you have left? What are the features you still want to develop? How long do you think it'll take? How many engineers do you have? What are you missing?
Right.
Taking all that, adding a buffer on top of it, just because you want to add a margin, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, let's just say 30 or 40%. That sounds like a decent margin. And then on top of that, let's work backwards from our tails. Our tails being localization, distribution, sound, editing, whatever it might be, and marketing and publishing. So work backwards from that, or add that onto the tail, and then work backwards to try to figure out what is that reality.
And John, was there anyone like helping you with this? Like, I still get kind of daunted by, games in general are hard. MMOs are extraordinarily hard, as we know, and so few have managed to sort of trip success. But like, to all of a sudden be, hey, I know you don't know how to ship an MMO, but we're doing it, and you're doing it live, and there's pressure on you. Like, I mean, I know no man is an island in a game dev team, but like, solving some of this math and trying to like put it all together, was it primarily just on your shoulders, or were there other folks kind of in that math room, so to speak, kind of helping suss it out?
Yep, I'd say all the production staff that worked with me were phenomenal helps. All the directors who are subject matter experts in their discipline had to help break things down, extraordinarily helpful. The publishing side of NCSoft was also extraordinarily helpful. We had a chief business development, or not chief business, head of business development, as well as the CFO, and they would come down and I would explain to them, hey, we have X number of words. I'm going to need $2 million to localize that, or whatever the amount of money was. And they were very supportive, and they would help me understand, how do I unlock those funds? Where do I get them from? How do we actually distribute these payments? How do I get these contracts built? So there was a phenomenal support structure that was available, but my job was to understand, how do you go leverage that support structure to accomplish the results? Yeah, because it's all there. You just got to know what to do with it.
Crazy, man.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a localization team in Europe, and so they were tremendously supportive. I'd never done localization, but I had to build a localization team for the project. Well, there happened to be a wonderful lady who worked in our European office who I would hop on calls with like 8 a.m. and I would say, how do you do this? How do you break it down? What are the companies you work with? Can I get those company contacts? Okay, here's a list of contacts. Now I'm going to call them and I'm going to learn from them. They're going to come in and redistribute, redeploy, and figure out how to answer problems.
What was your mindset at this time? Like, was it just were you kind of like in some ways just in the zone? Because I can imagine these were not your typical work days. And
nope.
How did you keep it together, and how long would you say this kind of high stress scenario went on for you? Like,
it went on until the very last day for me.
Wow.
My role continued to either expand or shift or shuffle, and there was no shortage of challenges or problems to solve. But
Like, are we talking years? What is the number here?
Oh, these are years, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, years, yeah, 2, maybe 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
probably of that. But I'm addicted to solving problems and helping people.
Yeah.
Sometimes to a fault. And so I personally felt like I thrived in that environment, although I think sometimes, how to put it, I don't want to say I had a hero complex, but a little bit. Yeah, we'll say it.
Sure.
I had having a bit of a hero complex of like, I can save this, I can fix this, I can do this, will drive, it's a great thing in a lot of ways, but it's also somewhat detrimental. So it would drive me to perform at a very high level, but at the same time, it also manifested some challenges where a lot of things became very dependent on me. And so, you know, I think as a journey for a lot of leaders in a company is like, how do you make sure you appropriately distribute where necessary and carry when necessary? And so that's kind of like the next phase of my journey. But like that was not what existed there. It was, okay, I'm going to learn about platform. Let's go learn about platform. I'll fly out to Austin every couple weeks. We'll learn about platforms, payment processing, fraud, payment gateways, payment methods. How do those integrate overall with the game environment? Do you go into escrow? Like, how do you do holds on items? Like, so that's like a whole different aspect of the business, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're saying, hey, you know what, we have to figure out distribution. How much time does the distributor need to burn a CD to get it into the stores? How many standees need to be generated? Who's generating the standees? How many of those can get out to the area where they need as well? For a while, I was responsible for publishing production as well.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying, guys? See what I'm saying? It's all in his brain somewhere.
It's there. It's just stuff.
Typically, this is the thing too. Is like at a company like Blizzard, there is enough people who know the kinds of things that you're saying, but it's usually spread across 5 to 10 people. Like you'd have to get them all in the room, but it's like somehow you've had the experience of kind of seeing it all, and I think maybe it has something to do with the unique sort of maybe crisis of organization around where Wildstar was at that moment that kind of forced you to just have to peek in everywhere. And I think that's somewhat rare. Like I think it's pretty rare for someone to have to have such a wide gaze, because usually you're not having to do it with that much pressure on your shoulders.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think it's very true. I don't know that I was forced to do it, but at the same time, if someone saw, I have a hard time saying no. And if people just tell me that there's a fire over there, I want to pick up the extinguisher and go put it out. I can't help myself.
Sure.
Whether it's in HR or recruiting or operations, DevOps, LiveOps, SecOps, art, design, engineering, they're all part of the same ecosystem that contributes to success. And so like I have a morbid like fascination with learning about other things, and because I believe the more I can understand reality and game development, the more effectively I can do my job.
Got it.
Oh, I love it, and it's super cool. So
so you guys inched towards launch. Take me to that chapter. You know, how confident were you guys going into that? Were there fears? You know, what was the state of the company at the time that you guys pulled the curtain back? I know you had been showing the game for quite some time at conferences and the like, but actual launching, what was that like? What was the experience inside the company like?
Yeah, okay, let's try to think. Pre-launch, it was one of your standard marches, right? We marched towards that deadline, and it was all about cranking out a massive amount of content. We had grown from, I believe it was 140 to 199 developers.
Wow.
Inside of the development team. Keeping everybody organized and on task and understanding what we had to do was an extravagant amount of work and an extravagant amount of pressure, because we basically said, this is now the date. And so, you know, we're now talking about like, do we cut this? Do we invest in this? And we're really trying to refine where we're going. And I think the thing is, you know, the amount of pressure was, it has to launch now on this date. And the way I viewed that is, okay, this sounds bad, but it's like we're gonna land this thing, but it's gonna be rough, and we know it's gonna be rough. And in fact, I think it was just a few days. It might have been a few days, no more than a week before, that we actually stood up the platform that Wildstar used as its auth and login, which all worked amazingly, but it was as YOLO as it kind of gets in some ways.
Man.
You know, but the organization NCSoft was committed to seeing Wildstar launch, and they're like, you're launching, and we're going to deploy everything we need to outside of Carbine to accomplish those goals. But you know, the amount of time of building a car while you're changing the wheels, while you're laying the pavement in front of it, is just a staggering amount of things to try to do. So we did all of it. We launched only 3 months off of my target or estimate, and that was because I had some misunderstandings about distribution, and we had physical, different time. We had physical stuff, and we had the physical CDs in the store. Yeah. So we launched a little bit off of our timeline. But by this time, the initial thing is everyone's kind of excited, a bit of that euphoria. We're launching a game. It's a great feeling. Let's pop some champagne. Let's do it. Countdown. 3, 2, 1. It's up. 700, 800, 900. Boom, crash. Yeah. Oh, no. And so you go instantly from excitement to despair. Right. And then we had an operations director at that time, and they're running up and down the hallway trying to gather people and make sure, like, okay, is this person fixing this? Is this engineer on that? And then, you know, you're slowly crawling back to like being okay. But your emotional journey is tied to the journey of the launch. And success is that initial success or initial launch is stressful, and it feels like kind of like success, and then it feels like it's all failing. WoW felt something like that before. Website launches, almost any first product launch. Blizzard's now super seasoned, so maybe not as much, but for any new studio, that is the most phenomenally stressful time. So the mood was great, then it was terrible, then it was good, then as time goes on, the numbers aren't exactly where we want them to be, and then there's a whole nother chapter that kind of exists.
What was that like, and when did that hit, that sort of realization of, oh man, we're not reaching the kind of expectations of the target that, you know, NCSoft would want or that we would want? And talk to me about that. And
it's, how to put it, in the very beginning, you have hope and faith. We're putting out the next patch. This patch is going to stabilize and fix these issues, and that's going to help our player base, and we're going to tell them that the devs are listening and we're trying to address this. So I think that from the developer side, there's a tremendous amount of hope that you can recover from the situation by trying to fix whatever it is that is bothering folks. The question is, are you able to address all of those things? And some games have, right? They have worked on it for years, and all of a sudden they take off and they're huge hits. We can be that too. So in the beginning, there's a phenomenal amount of this hope. And so all you're doing is saying, okay, can we even launch a patch every month? Like, we launched a second patch. It was kind of unstable. Why was it unstable? It was unstable because we don't have branch management. We don't have a way to segregate our change lists, and we don't have a way to like safely deploy content. So, you know, the fans wanted a more stable game, but we ended up making it more unstable by the way we handled some of our development practices. So how do we fix that? How do we address that? So again, you're going into extreme problem solving mode, and all you have time for, if you believe in the company or you believe in the game, is to have faith that you can fix it, but you don't know that it's going to be okay. So even if the numbers are going down, you still believe that if I can address these things, not only will they stop going down, they'll level, and then they'll start to grow because I've now delivered on my promise to my player or to the community. And I believe it could be a good game. I believe it is a good game. And I'll tell you a secret. When I first started at Blizzard, I played World of Warcraft for the first time in its alpha, and I was like, I don't think it's that good of a game.
Interesting. Why was that? I'm curious.
I just picked it up and I was like, this is nowhere near as fun as Warcraft 2, or it's nowhere near as fun as StarCraft or Warcraft 3. Like, I don't know why they're doing this. I said, I love this company, but like, oh man, I don't know if this is like the right move, but I guess they're Blizzard. It'll probably be okay. You know, I like EverQuest more. So this is me as a consumer. Right? I was a little wrong, if you didn't know.
Did you feel that way when it launched, or what? Did the game change enough that you actually turned your opinion around, or was it? I'm just curious.
For Warcraft, WoW. It went through. I can't remember exactly how long, but I want to say it was like almost a 6-month beta, and more content went in, more things went in, and I started to like it.
Yeah.
But I actually never loved it. Like so many people did.
Yeah.
And it is an incredible game, tremendous amount of content. But I did not attach to it in the way a lot of other people did.
Interesting. Yeah.
Not the way I did to EverQuest for whatever reason.
Sure.
But I didn't think it was going to be this huge hit. But I remember I loved Wildstar. I actually loved the product more than I loved World of Warcraft, but I didn't play it. I just loved the product.
Sure.
I was just like, I think it's such a cool IP. I think it's a cool this, it's a cool that. And I played the content though, and I was like, it's not resonating with me. But you know what? Neither did some of the WoW stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So but it seems like we have more dynamic stuff. Telegraphs, combat seems a little bit more exciting. So why wouldn't it be this massive success if we can fix these things?
I see.
Yeah. But that faith was was unfortunately, I don't want to say it was misplaced, but it did not bear fruit.
Right.
Yeah.
So how far into the game's launch would you say that absolute reckoning of like, okay, we've got an issue here. Like this is beyond just like try to patch and fix, but we have to figure out what we do now in the wake of what seems to be a lack of success.
Yeah, there were some very hard realizations. By this time, our president of our studio had left, so I was moved into the executive producer role, and there was a new head of the studio over top of it. And we were basically presented with the challenge of how do we make this financially stable, and what will this company be long term? And there's not a lot of levers you can pull once you've stabilized the game, which we did. The game was stable, servers were stable. So what are the levers you can pull to increase the number of users that are in the game?
Free to play, basically.
Free to play.
Yeah.
And this is what we came up with.
Sure.
And so we came up with, okay, there's only two levers. Steam was one, free to play was the other.
Right.
Steam with its revenue distribution share, challenging from a financial situation, and at the same time converting to free to play. Sounds great, but you need to get the numbers, right? So we spend, I want to say it was 2 months designing a whole free to play kind of like, here's the systems, here's the mechanics, here's the types of things we would sell, here's how we would do it. And if I remember right, we came up with roughly about 150 people team over the course of 9 months. And so my team and I, we went through, we planned, we did risk analysis, mitigation planning, what are the levers we can pull throughout development in case this person quits or this feature falls off, how do we handle all this? We put all this together, we present it, we prepare it, and NCSoft is generous enough to say, you got another go.
Wow.
Okay. But it did cost us. So we went from that roughly 200 number, I believe it was down to about 150, 155.
Just in terms of attrition of employees?
No, we riffed it. I'm sorry, reduction in force.
Oh, you had a reduction.
Yeah, so we did a reduction.
Oh, man. Yeah.
We did a reduction. It did impact some of the directors as well. So there was like going to be new directors, some old directors were going.
Wow.
So it's a really large
that is so
transition.
disruptive to a culture in so many ways.
Highly disruptive to a culture. So then, this is when I start learning a phenomenal amount about the business side and the HR side. Like, do you do a retention thing? Do you not do a retention thing? What's LTI or long-term incentives? Like, how do you actually retain top talent? How do you help people on their exit? Like, what does an exit package look like? What is WARN? Like, what are certain laws that are around protected classes and protected groups if you're of a certain age or a certain thing?
This is a whole nother level.
They're all different. Yeah. So, anyway,
dude, it's so intense. It's intense, but I see it, man. It's like it's so many things, and to figure out. How, I could see someone like yourself being in a situation where, now we have to sort of reduce our employee base, but how do we do that in an ethical way and something that you're assessing the cost to do that rightly, or as rightly as possible.
Yep. And to NCSoft's credit, they were 100% ethical from everything I ever experienced. They were trying to be thoughtful, trying to be fair, trying to figure out how to set people up in the best way possible. So we'd have real conversations, and you have real conversations around the first thing you have to do is step back and say, what is the right thing to do for the business and the long-term health of this company? Once you understand that, you say, what is the right thing to do for these individuals to help them on their way? So if you're like, okay, if you try to figure out what is the appropriate package, how do you set them up to be in a good situation. Do people have extenuating circumstances? Did someone recently have a death in the family, or is someone out on medical leave? Is someone sick? How do we help them with their transition so that they have coverage and medical coverage or insurance so they're not in a difficult spot? So you try to have, and that group, I don't think all companies do this, but the group that I was with during that time, and I know NCSoft has a lot of critics, but I would say that I was supremely impressed with the spirit of how we wanted to deal with it. Our execution had some challenges, but I would say the spirit of how we approached everything was very pure, and I was so grateful for some of the colleagues that I worked with that they were very open to those conversations and that they actually fostered them.
That's incredible. So you guys get to the right amount of employees. You work on free to play.
Oh yeah, free to play. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Let's continue.
Sorry, I will continue going down that path. Sorry, the free to play transition, we put together a 9-month plan. We hit it to the day. Actually, one of the first things we had in our risk analysis. So we do a risk analysis of everyone on the team. We say the biggest risk analysis we have against this overall project plan is if our UI developer leaves. 1 month in, so we open up the position, maybe it was like 1 or 2 months in. So we open up the position, we get an offer out to someone from Blizzard, we end up capturing them, but we capture them on the exact day that person resigned. Oh, wow. And so because we did the risk analysis, we knew where that problem was going to be. We opened up a position just to shore up that risk, and we were just able, I call it the Indiana Jones thing, where he takes the bag of sand and he swaps it out. We were able to somehow pull that off, but so we had those plans, we had everything in place. It was ambitious, but we made it, and we launched it free to play. And it was a rougher launch than the original launch. We had a larger influx of players than we expected. We had chain crashing of our auth service. We were basically going on 24-hour shifts, like we were just on rotation. So we created something called the War Room. We had all the key stakeholders. We had everyone on a phone. We had people on Skype. We had people like, everyone ready on chat. Everything was ready, and we were just jamming on it. And it basically came down to our engineers, and we're just like, we need all of you to just crank. And we've got them working. We've got people in Austin working. We've got people in Korea focused on the problem. And it persisted a lot longer than we were comfortable with. And because we have so many people trying to get in and they're just not, or when they get in, they're getting booted back out, and they're just having massive technical issues. And it's so painful. Like, again, it's like your heart getting just crushed. And you could see like, wow, is this like another 20,000, 30,000, 40,000? We're going like, it's got 100,000. Oh my gosh. We're going to be okay, maybe, right? If our ARPU, our average revenue per user, our ARPDAU, if all these things can pull together, we might have done it. Then it's like, no. And then you're like, we're stable, spike, fall. Wow. So I think the dreaded model, and let me think, probably 95% of game development is your first week, you get a massive amount of revenue, and you gain probably 70 to 90% of your revenue, and then it just falls right off, and then it tapers off. We were that one. So we saw this meteoric rise, and then boom, immediate fall, and fell lower.
Really?
And so then it's crushing. It's absolutely crushing, because now you're talking about, well, there's not really any levers to pull on this now. We could put it on Steam, but there's not a lot of levers. It's going to not really change our reality. It's going to tweak our reality. And so you have to come to the very difficult realization of, okay, now what is the long-term future of this company? We're not Wildstar. We're not the Wildstar company anymore. Even though we love it and we believe in it, it doesn't make sense from a business standpoint, and the revenue does not cover 150 developers. And if you think on top of that, that's just developers. There's plenty of support staff that were built around that. There's operations people, there's QA people, and those aren't counted in development, by the way. And there are publishing people. Those are all tied to this product and the success of this project. And it just didn't make it.
Wow.
And so now you have to try to decide, what do we do with this organization going forward? And so we went to work and tried to find some additional projects and some additional IPs and some things to work with. And at the end of the day, even though we did have some success in that adventure, NCSoft had decided that, instead of really doubling down on funding some of those projects, that they wanted to take a more conservative approach and go a little, decrease before they increased.
At this point, how many years is this in Carbine's life, if you had to to assess it?
It's over 10 because we had the Wildstar gun made. And 2 people had it at the time. Yeah. So
this is like a Blizzard kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Like an employee.
Blizzard does a sword at 5, a shield at 10,
right.
a ring at 15, and a helmet at 20. Is that right? Something like that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, a Stein at 2.
Yeah.
I'm designing this right now for our current company. I'm doing the same thing. NCSoft was. They had a statue of this character that was a Granok. It was a mold for 5. And then for 10, it was a 3D replica of one of the guns from the logo. And so I had just gotten that made. Quality didn't turn out as well as we would have hoped. I should have had a new one made, but we had I think only 3 people had them in the end, maybe 5 total. And so it was definitely after 10 years. So I want to say it was probably close to 11 during that period of time. And so, I had the unfortunate pleasure, along with some of my colleagues in the management staff, putting together plans or proposals for what are different scenarios. So, and these are crazy scenarios. Like, what if there's a scenario where everybody's gone, or 50 people are gone, or 35 people stay, or hey, we have 2 small projects and 1 incubation. And so, I'd fly up to Seattle and meet with our CEO and, a bunch of our other key stakeholders. And, I'd go back and I'd try to figure out what is the smallest amount that Wildstar can run on, because no amount of new content is going to save it.
Right.
So how do we make it operationally sound and not cripple it because it was running on a home created engine.
Right.
So if you take out certain people or certain personalities, it just can't even function. So how do you try to figure that out? So I put together a multi-page plan mapping out every individual in the company, what their roles and responsibilities were, what their skill sets were, contributions, what features they worked on, what the risk analysis would be if we were to reduce some people but not them and they stayed, how likely were they to stay. Anyway, map all that out. And I mapped out all the different scenarios. I think I mapped out four scenarios. And I remember the day I got the phone call that they're like 35-0, which is basically 35 on Wildstar, no additional new project. At that time, they ended up doing a new project for a while before they shuttered the studio. And I was like, okay, well, that means, and from my perspective, because I had modeled that one out, it was mine. I knew what it all meant behind the scenes. And in that recommendation, that model, I was gone. There was one director over the whole project. You don't need 5 directors over that small of a project. And
so you fired yourself in
yes, I did. Yes, I did. I fired myself, and very purposefully too.
I believe it. You have that kind of mind where you're like, nope, I am not needed here now.
It wouldn't be the right use of my skill. I did tell them they were willing to allow me to stay, but and I said I'd help with the transition, so I stayed for 5 months, 6 months, I don't remember. But I said I would stay through the transition to help the people who would be left, and I wanted to make sure the contractors got taken care of through their process, and some other employees, and help with any issues. And there was lots of issues that had to be resolved, and I was very knowledgeable about the whole project, and so exit gracefully. I was committed at that point that it was the best thing for me to do, and I was under a phenomenal amount of stress. In my personal life, very randomly, I was having these weird, funny things where I'd be sitting just like we are now, and I'd have like a resting heart rate over 100, and that's like my resting heart rate. And it was really funny because I don't perceive stress like, I think some people are like, I feel really stressed. I didn't feel stressed, but it was stressful because I love it. It's actually really exciting, even though it's really sad. At the same time, I thought of it like, okay, this sucks, but I have an opportunity to try to make the best out of this situation. So I'm very grateful that I'm in these shoes, because I can try to create the best scenario for those who are remaining, or whatever it might be. And there's nothing I could have really done to change the product. That wasn't really what I was there to do. I was there to help organize all that to come together. And so you just try to make the best of it.
Man, so remarkable. Looking back on that stuff now, I know you said you didn't really have a clear sense of how stressed you were, but now that you have maybe a different perspective on normal, like, can you recognize it now almost looking back, or is it still kind of...
Can I recognize it looking back? No, and almost no one can either. Like no one ever looks at me and goes like, very rare, actually, I'm sorry, this has happened a few times, but very rarely will someone go like, are you all right? Are you stressed? Like it's just not. It's just I'm busy.
You're just busy.
It's just busy. It's just problems. It's just opportunities, right? Like I think life is full of challenges. And life isn't supposed to be easy, or sometimes it is, right? But I think it's just how we contextualize what we're going through that defines whether or not we feel stressed.
Right.
If we feel like life is happening for us instead of happening to us, then we feel like there is a lesson to be learned and there is a beautiful opportunity to try or learn or grow or to make a positive impact, to make the best out of something complicated. And so that's why I think I don't feel it the same way or understand it the same way. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. You and I both have a lot of shared friends who worked on Wildstar and were at Carbine, and a lot of them all have their own opinions about why wasn't this game a success or what happened. And even players out there, they all have their own opinion on, you know, maybe if the art style had been a little different, or, you know, maybe had they not focused so much on PvE, or, you know, this or that. There's so many opinions out there about why didn't Wildstar succeed. I'm curious to get your succinct opinion, even though that's impossible. Like, it's impossible because the game and your experience of the game had so many turns from being someone who was sort of, you know, mid-level in the trench working on the product to then kind of overseeing the product and the team and planning launch scheduling and stuff like that. But if you had to come up with a short answer for why wasn't this game successful, what would that be?
The easiest way for me to explain this would just be one word, would be retention. And that is basically how sticky is your product.
Right.
If I'm playing, and this is what World of Warcraft does phenomenally, their long-term retention for the game is incredible. Now, that if you peel that back a layer, you get into all the things you're talking about. Well, is it the art style that makes it not wanting to retain? Is it this quest that you drop out at level 13? Is it you know, how raids are set up? Is it war plots? Is it whatever it is? And a lot of those are all the factors that feed into that. But they basically feed into a general concept, which in the industry we call retention. Mobile lives and dies by this. Day 1, day 7. You know,
it's almost it's systematic for them.
It's very systematic, and they're way better at it than we are in the PC space. But that is what killed Wildstar. We could have done more on the acquisition side. So 3 parts. The 3 parts of game development for any game: acquisition, retention, monetization, ARM. Right. So acquisition wasn't great, but when it's a free-to-play game, you got free acquisition for the most part. You're really talking about marketing, and can you pump enough people in the top of the funnel to get money out of the bottom. Retention, you're not talking about the game design. You're talking about the game design and the mechanics and the way people engage with them. And then monetization, you're really talking about their ability to convert into a spending user. And you know, free-to-play games put paywalls up. They put paying mechanics in. You know, so how generous are you? We were pretty generous with Wildstar, so your necessity to engage with our monetization scheme was not hard. And so since we were very generous, even though we had players, they didn't necessarily spend as well. So my perspective is, you know, taking a step back, the simplest thing is retention. People can break it down to the art style. The art style was polarizing.
I loved it. I'm just going to say that out there.
Yeah, I loved it.
To Matt and Corey and the whole team on Carbine, you guys did an amazing job. The art style is incredible. Even to this day, I go back very often and look at the concepts from that game, and I think it's amazing. I was a huge fan.
Thank you. Me too. I love it. And it was polarizing, but it was polarizing more. It was 70-30, I think, when we did a lot of our focus testing on that type of stuff. I would rather have people love or hate something than to just not even care. And if more people love it than hate it, that you're probably doing something right. That's for the art style stuff. A lot of other things, you know, whether it was war plots and nobody being able to engage with it because it was 40 raids, or whether you say the raids were the best part, but nobody could get to them because there was so much content in between. It's how to put it? They're straws. They're all straws stacked in a pile that all kind of add up to, you know, this inability for players to attach. And whatever that was. Some people attached really heavy to housing at level 13, and it was interesting if you looked at the retention graph or leveling graph, and you're like, wow, is it 13 or 15? I don't remember, but basically you'd see a huge amount of people just stop leveling. And what it was a huge portion of our player base just stopped playing the game and just want to do housing.
Wow.
That's not bad. That's actually kind of cool. But then you'd have a whole other set of the player base, and we had this really challenging attunement process. It was crazy, actually, but that turned off a lot of people from even getting ready to do raids. And then the raids were very active, and people were very engaged with them. And so we had people inside the studio who said, we should have made this the sandwich and click model. For Wildstar, you had to stay very engaged. Combat had telegraphs and it had different actions and they were contextual, so you had to be very quick with your movements. World of Warcraft, you can have a sandwich and boom, boom, do your thing, right? Hit 1, hit 7, hit 3. Some people felt that was our only problem.
It's so complicated. It's like you're saying, retention even specifically is such a hard thing to put your finger on. You can look at so many models and so many graphs. And even we did this a lot on Heroes at Blizzard. It's just so hard to know exactly what it is that's keeping people from sticking with your game. Sometimes it's the fact that their friends aren't playing, but then how do you solve that? It's just, sometimes it's a time and place. Like, how do you find that tipping point moment where Fortnite is Fortnite and there's something about that game, this time, this place, that causes it to, spike the way that it does.
There's a wonderful book. Sorry to go on a bit. Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point, which talks about why did Hush Puppies take off, or why did this product all of a sudden succeed? And you start peeling it back, and it's not scientific. If it was, we'd all be millionaires, right? And to your point, when you're peeling it back and you're looking at heroes, you're like, we put out this new hero. Doesn't everyone want to play him? Why not? They're fun. They're balanced. In fact, they're a little bit overpowered. Why aren't they attaching? What is it? Is it the art style? Is it that this streamer didn't do this? And sometimes it is tied just to a streamer or just to a conversation. Sometimes it's tied to deeper things. I think Wildstar had a lot of little things that kind of added up to that. But I wish I knew the true answer, because if I could have helped that company, that organization be successful, I would have.
And it's so hard when you're making a 10-year. It's like a 10-year. You're targeting your missile, and sure, it's going to wiggle and woggle, but when it lands, it's like a 10-year decision. You decided back then, right? Here's where we're going to go. And MMOs are so complicated; it takes so much time that you kind of hope that you're kind of making a massive bet that you're going to hit that tipping point in that way. And I don't know. I'm curious to get your take on, as someone who's spent the time going through and sort of wrapping their brain around the complexity of MMOs, will we see more? Is this a feasible?
From me? Or
no. I'm sure you're probably I'm good.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Early release for time served. Yeah.
But there, I'm sure. Look, I'm a huge MMO fan. I want to play more. I'm sure there's plenty of gamers out there as well who want to see more MMOs. But why? Will we see them again? I'm curious to get your take. And
absolutely.
Hope springs eternal on that thing for a lot of people, but the complexity remains.
I think at the moment there is a convergence of technology that will make MMOs a stronger and more viable long-term game. With the ability of photogrammetry and asset and content creation getting faster and faster, makes the ability to create large and immersive worlds easier and easier. And so I do anticipate ambitious projects of larger scale coming back, and smaller development teams being able to make those types of worlds in the future. One of the challenges we had on Wildstar was we said we have to be as feature rich as World of Warcraft. Now, it wasn't World of Warcraft at launch. We had to be as feature rich as World of Warcraft in Cataclysm.
So impossible.
And so you're chasing up to them. At that point, you're chasing up to 15 years of their development is what you're trying to catch up to. And doing it the same way they did, which was a homebrewed engine, very hand-painted art style, very expensive way of building things. But with the changes in artificial intelligence, the changes in tools and technology, or I shouldn't say artificial intelligence, I should say machine learning, to see all of those advancements. And I've already seen some fascinating stuff with asset and terrain generation and content creation, procedural animations, that gives me almost supreme confidence that the day of large immersive MMOs and worlds will be back. Even though it's still that way in China and Korea, there's still tons of those types of games. But I would say that there will be a new wave of those games in the future.
Just not on your watch.
Probably not. I could do it, but most likely, I think.
I don't know. I hope you come back to it at some point, because I'm sure someone with your experience and breadth of knowledge would be a huge asset.
Oh, thank you. I think I could. I think the way I would approach it, though, is one of the things I really admired about the Blizzard team is that the team of developers that had made World of Warcraft had made other games and other games together. One of the greatest ambitions and greatest kind of challenges that Carbine took on was, we're going to pull people together, and a lot of people who haven't done this, and we're going to try to figure out
new team.
Yeah. So how are we going to do this? And we're going to build all this. So we're going to build all of it on top of the fact that we're learning how to do it in a lot of ways.
Learning how to do it together, as well as like an added level of complexity.
Yep. You had artists who were being lead designers, and you had people wanting to take on all different roles and different things, and that creates all kinds of unique challenges. And I would say that so if I was to do one in the future, one, I don't really get to make games as much anymore. I would say that if one of the teams that I represented wanted to, the first thing is, have you guys gone through a cycle to understand what it is to create and ship and maintain a live product? And if you want to take on that ambition to try something different, please feel free. I did an analysis of every single product in the industry because I wanted to understand what type of games can 15 people make, or 30 people make, or 50 people. I did that analysis as one thing, and the second analysis I did is what type of games make over 10 million, 100 million, 300 million. And once you start getting into the World of Warcraft territory of dollars, let's say anything over 100 million. When you start getting in generally into the territory of over $100 million revenue generating games, they're built by either one of two things: established studios or established franchises and IPs. And so if you ask me, would I ever do an MMO again? Maybe, but would I ever do an MMO from scratch on a brand new IP, brand new team, brand new technology? The answer is absolutely not.
Wow, interesting.
Unless they had, something else that I couldn't even fathom, right? But if you told me, hey, look, no, here's an existing IP, here's a plan with our technology of how to build this, and here's why we believe we're delivering something unique and meaningful to the market, and we have seasoned people to kind of, build around that. Oh yeah, sure, why not? That'd be a fun journey. But the other path is fraught with so many rocks and landmines and challenges that the chances of success are greatly diminished. The chances of success versus game developers is already low enough. It's already a challenging endeavor. It's just like a successful movie. It's hard to make something that's fun and great, right? And so, why make it harder?
I get it. So let's talk about your transition into where you are now. I know that coming off of the time with Carbine was massively stressful. So what was your mindset then? Were you done with the industry? How did you transition from that into kind of where you are now? Can you just walk us through that sort of latter end?
Of course.
And would love to talk a little bit about Nexon OC and your current work.
Yeah, please. So the first thing I did was I said I wanted to do a startup, crazy enough. And so I tried to pull together, I think it was roughly seven individuals, see if they wanted to do a startup. Ended up just being two of us. We worked on a prototype for 6 months. It was awesome. Got to learn how to do behavior trees, AI, perception components, base building components, dynamic skies, a whole environment pipeline. I was able to generate huge 10K worlds. I figured all that stuff, world machine, texturing stuff based on angles and how do I perceive you as an enemy or a friend. Anyway, I got to learn all that stuff. I got to be a developer again for a while, which I loved. After 6 months, basically came to the determination that this is okay, but I don't believe that this is going to, I don't necessarily think I can sell this, and I don't think I can necessarily continue to work on this in its current scope. We'd have to rethink it. So my partner and I decided, this probably isn't the thing. I decided to go travel the world. I think I went to 18 countries in 6 months. I don't remember. A lot of countries. Went traveling around. I disappeared for a while.
That's cool.
And
were you convinced you were still going to stay in games, or were you?
No, I wasn't actually. I was because I've had so many jobs in the game industry. I know that I can move to almost any job. You don't want me to be a doctor. I'll kill somebody. But generally, I have a lot of faith that through whatever work ethic I have and ability to understand things, that I could figure it out over time. So I did discuss with my wife at the time, I could do this or that, and that's not a necessity. We'll see. And I remember her advice to me was, you love games. You love games, you love how they're made, you love how they're built. And someone asked me once, like, who do you admire most in your career? And I'd just say, like, oh my gosh, the people that I work with. I can learn this from this person and this from that person. This is something else. And I remember even when I was at Carbine, I was asked that in my interview, and they said, who are some of your favorite artists? And they're expecting me to say, I don't know, Michelangelo, Feng Zhu, who knows, right? And I was like, oh my God, this guy I worked with a Blizzard named Jimmy Lowe. He would paint these textures this way. This guy named Matt McCarsky would do this thing. I love working with all these talented individuals.
Yeah.
So coming back from that trip, I decided that, okay, I don't know if anyone's going to want me. I worked on a failed project. It failed pretty spectacularly. Not the worst. I mean, there's been bigger, but like it didn't make it. Wildstar didn't make it. So I thought maybe people would not want to work with me again. So I reached out to my former employer. I reached out to a couple other people. We just had some lunch, Yeah. None of them had any open positions, but somehow, and I don't know why, but for whatever lucky reason, 5 of them made me offers. And I got offers for development director, vice president production, and then Nexon was an amazing one. I had a conversation with them. I discussed with them how I would run a team, how I measure success, how I measure failure, what the chances of success are. Here's what you should expect in what type of phase of development, whether it's prototype, vertical slice. Here's the pitfalls, here's the challenges, here's your hiring model, compensation model. Anyway, how to build and structure a team.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they felt that was valuable and that would be interesting. So they made me an offer to join Nexon and to open up a studio in Orange County, which is called Nexon Orange County. And it was incredible. So then starting from scratch, I'd never started a business from scratch. Now, how do we get our tax ID? Where's the license? How are we doing our build out? Do we have enough insulation for the sound room? Okay, what are our HR policies and procedures? What's our mission statement? How do we build all these things? It's just an absolutely incredible experience that I didn't necessarily expect to have, but that I couldn't be more grateful for because, how do we handle blueprints, naming convention? Because the team is so small in the beginning, I got to be a developer again for roughly 6 months. And I got to say, like, how are we structuring this? How are we building this? How are we handling recruiting, hiring? How are we handling onboarding? Do people get a mug, a cup, a t-shirt? How do we make sure that they have a good experience when they first get in? How are we handling perforce? How do we handle check-ins? How do we handle change management? Sorry, I can go on like...
Yeah, were there any expectations on the kinds of games you would make from Nexon? Or were they like, hey, surface them up yourself? Like, what was the kind of... And again, I know we're kind of getting into territory where we haven't seen a lot from your studio yet, so I don't want you to feel like you're crossing over any borders you can't talk about. But I am curious how, in this state of like kind of newness for you, did that also include kind of a pretty wide horizon in terms of the content you guys were going to make?
Yeah, so one thing I find pretty amazing about Nexon is that they have, they're kind of a federated model for game development. They have a lot of different game studios who have a lot of different ideas of what they want to make. And one of the general things for us was to make a game that we wanted to make that was tailored towards more of a Western audience. And so talking with them and understanding that those are some of the desires of Nexon as an organization, I said, okay, what I would like to do for you, because I didn't come with a game idea, I said, I'm here to help build the studio. I will be the general manager, but I'm not going to be the general manager, the product owner, and all these other things. So I said, my job is to find you those people. And so the first thing that I did in that process was I said, I'm going to, talk to some people I know, and I'm going to find out from a lot of people I don't. So put ads out, reach out to the industry, just blast a wide kind of net and say, do you have a game idea you'd love to make? And then, my job and Sangwon's job at the time, Mr. Chung, was to evaluate whether or not we wanted to make that game. And so we kind of held like a mini American Idol, where people would come in and they would say, hey, here's the game I want to make. Here's the P&L. And well, they didn't say the P&L, profit and loss statement. I'm sorry, I would do that. But they would come in and just say, here's my game idea. Here's what it takes. And here's why I believe it should be made.
Wow. And it's like a dream for developers in some ways to have that opportunity.
Yep. And a lot of people were very shocked by that opportunity. And basically what I would say is I would talk to the individual. We'd bring them in. And I just, with my boss, I would just say, I have the right of refusal if I don't think I could make that game or I don't think it's close enough to something I understand. But if I think it's possible and you believe it's the right product, we're going to go ahead and get it and make it going forward. And we'll build the team around that idea. So for our game, everyone that we pretty much brought on board was brought on board like, this is the game. Is this the game you want to make? And so that helps solve a lot of challenges in regards to investment, commitment, buy-in.
Right.
You know, people want to play the game and they play it every day, as opposed to you having to force your developers maybe to play the game. And so we went through that process. I want to say it was roughly 35. Was it 35? Yeah, roughly 35 individuals that we interviewed. Different game pitches, everything from match 3s all the way up to MMOs.
Wow.
Even though I said no MMOs. By the way, the framework I had created, I said you need to be able to make the game with 35 developers in 2 years, knowing that my framework was larger than that, both in years and developers, for my budget that I was looking at. But that's what I wanted people to think of. That was their box.
You still got MMOs?
Yep. I would say that
they're like, dude, you're not gonna pull the wool over my eyes.
Yeah, I'm the last person you're gonna trick. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, but that's adorable, and I wish you good luck in accomplishing your goals and dreams.
Geez.
And there was a lot of conversations like that. I think my boss at the time has a phenomenal wealth of knowledge, and so him and I would talk and go like, oh, they want to do this complicated social feature. If they broke that down, even if we found 2 machine learning people and 1 of these people, and that took us a year, it'd still take them probably 3 years to make just that one feature. So we would have these conversations around the feasibility, the ability to deliver it, knowing that most people don't know.
Yeah, don't have a knowledge around that.
Yeah, and so we're just trying to understand from a risk perspective of what's possible, and then also from, how long would it take to hire? What type of talent would we need to accomplish that? How easy would that be able to bring on board? How dependent is that on these back-end features or on this other technology?
Yeah.
And then we basically break all that down to say, what can we do? Because we're a first-time studio.
And
we tried to be very realistic about that. Like, if I have somebody come in and go, I want to build this brand new game engine from scratch, my immediate thing would be is like, how complicated is the game, and why is that the right decision? Because can I spend 2 years making a game engine, and then 2 years making a game on top of that? Or what is that going to cost me?
Well, what else can you tell us about your studio? How big are you guys, and when do you think we can expect to see what you've been working on? You guys have been cranking away for
2 years.
2 years now, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So 2 years. I would say we're around 60 people. You will hear something from us by the end of this year.
All right.
Yeah, so,
cool. That's a pretty big window, but I'm excited.
Yeah. So I would say, that's my plan. But of course, we'll see how things pan out.
I'm excited. I know there's some good friends there that I know as well, and I'm excited to see what they've been working on. And I know it's cool. Anytime I talk to folks from your team, they always speak very highly of you.
Oh, you're very kind. They're very kind too.
Yeah. And anything else about the company culture? What are you currently trying to seed? When you talk about the startup vibe and the values, coming off of the experiences you've had, what would you say are the few key focuses that you've wanted to instill in this particular studio? If you had to sort of succinctly describe it.
Number one, are we making a game that we want to play? Number two, are we making it in a way that is sustainable and reasonable? Number three, are we treating everybody that we work with dignity and respect? Number four, are we committed to learning and being humble? And let me see if I can come up with another one off the top of my head. Number five, I'd say deliver results and be thoughtful of what the budget is, and just be aware of it. But more than anything, if we're not making something we want to play, what are we doing?
Right.
And if we're being sloppy with how we develop it, why don't we know better. So I think it's the number one thing about the culture is a culture of constant improvement and learning, and of trying to make something that we want to enjoy.
Yeah. One of the things that's impressed me as I've heard you talk about Nexon OC is your decision to allow the teams that are under your roof to kind of have successes and have failures based on their own learnings, like almost like a sense of autonomy within obviously an overarching umbrella of protection from your side, your sort of insight as you're looking at all the numbers, but you do seem to give them a pretty long leash in terms of their ability to make decisions. Can you talk about that? Like why you feel like that's important, and why that's a unique part of how you're building this studio?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the story from Carbine, where a lot of people became dependent on my ability to kind of say, do this, do that. And for people to learn, to truly learn, they learn best by doing. And I believe that another thing that is also very important is when people can see kind of the bar, they will usually meet it or exceed it. So the biggest challenge is, for me, is how do I contextualize their reality to where they can understand that this is where they need to be, and then they understand and have to self-address how they want to get there. And in an ideal scenario, I don't even have to really tell them they must be here. I just have to help them understand that this is where they want to be, and then they hopefully will go like, well, to get there, we would do the following 3 to 5 steps. I think it's just it's honestly just a philosophical thought on, working with developers. Now, there are definitely times when I need to get involved and say, hey, the way you guys are handling this thing is going to create the following challenges, and I try to provide my counsel and guidance. But for the most part, in my most ideal world, the way Nexon is a bit of a federated company where, if you have success, you can multiply and distribute that success in other places. That to me is a dream. So to empower teams, to empower themselves to make good and fun games, that's the ultimate goal.
Got it.
And I don't mind being involved, and I don't mind sticking my hands into things and going like, here we can do this or that. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that as much autonomy and as much freedom and as much growth as they can handle, I want to allow them to have. How much can they eat? If they can eat it all, great. If you can eat everything on your plate and there's nothing left over and you have it all, perfect. If not, let me know who else you need to help you finish your dessert or whatever's in there, or I'll help and help solve some of those problems. So I think it's just a philosophy of, I want to see more game developers in the industry learning and growing and making unique and interesting games, and I want to see our industry grow. And so if I can have one game team who does this, and then they want to make some type of Candy Crush game. We're not making a Candy Crush game. But let's say we have one team who wants to make that, and another team wants to make a dark metal violent world. I believe both of those products deserve a chance to exist, and I believe those developers can exist in similar ecosystems, but they have to be on their own teams. Because if you hire the dark metal team, they're never going to make this Candy Crush game, and I believe that those people serve a very valuable market. And these death metal people, they also serve a valuable market. And then if somebody else wants to make the super generic, I want to make the thing that mass appeals to everybody, I believe that should also be made. I think they just need to each understand in each one of those contexts, what is the framework of which you would need to live in to make that a reasonable investment. So is this 20 people? Is this 30 people? Is this 50 people? Am I willing to give you money for 10 years or 2 years for that? You want to do it? I want to empower you to do it. But that's 2 years and let's say $10 million, because the chance of it making more than 20 is less than 3%. But I believe it should be made. And then trying to say, like, how do I do that, right?
No, that makes sense. It's really, really cool, man. It's such an interesting mind around assessing success on these very complicated projects. It's like these aren't small commitments; they're multi-year commitments. And I think the more thoughtful and sort of analytical you can be about your decision to undertake that multi-year journey and ensure that your team is going to have a chance for success, it's huge. I mean, we're talking about people's lives, and there's so many people that can not complain. They're rightly accurate in the sense that the game industry can be kind of hit and miss, and people have to leave jobs and get new jobs, find new homes, all these kinds of things. And as someone who's sort of accountable for a team of players, it's really on your shoulders to ensure that the decisions that are being made in that way are kept within this safety framework that allows them, a high chance of being able to stay beyond just X project, right?
That's the hope. That's the hope and the dream. I think the hope and the dream, I forget what the exact number was. I think I shared it with you when we did the little portfolio thing. Out of any indie project, and there's thousands of them, only 5% of them make more than, $1.5 million. That's 5% of thousands, right? And the nature of that means that it's really challenging for us to have successful products. That's something that resonates and that is then sticky. And so a way to kind of feel better about a lot of game development, at least in this current phase that we are in, is how do you create, the safest, kind of healthiest place to work, and the healthiest place to allow creative ideas to be fostered, to give them the opportunity to go and be birthed into the world to see if they can stand on their own. And then if they can, how beautiful, because you're really talking about a rare spawn.
Right, that's true.
A successful game is a rare spawn.
Yeah.
There's plenty of trash mobs out there.
Yeah.
I can go and put out some type of casino game and probably make money.
Right, yeah.
But I'm really interested in trying to create unique and interesting experiences for consumers.
Right.
And I would rather either say aim high and miss, or try to do something unique than to try to do something safe.
Yeah.
But through that whole process, how can you make it as healthy and as educational and as interesting as possible to maximize your chance to be not just, if you're lucky, that one hit, but if you're even more lucky, multiple hits.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very few studios have pulled that off. Of course, Blizzard is one of them.
Right.
Activision, its parent, or I should say parent, they're merged now. Sorry.
Yeah.
Another one as well. Ubisoft, some others, but it's not common. And the way that a lot of those companies do it now is they outspend everybody else.
Yeah.
Indie developers have it a lot harder.
They they force manifest their destiny via financial commitments.
They can they can outspend. Now, just like Microsoft versus Apple or anything else, you can outspend, but a truly new and innovative idea can disrupt, but the odds are stacked. But luckily there's things like Unreal, there are things like Megascans, there are technologies, machine learning, there are tools that are coming available and that are coming online that will further increase developers of mid and smaller size to be able to punch above their pay grade.
Awesome.
And so I hope to see more studios be formed. I hope to see more interesting content be generated, and kind of a rebirth of when games were first being made. And you saw such a wide range of ideas all over the place.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that, but also those ideas being of high quality, so you don't get a bit of the Steam challenge. We have like a lot of what do I want to play,
right.
And so I hope to see higher quality games that deliver meaningful and engaging experiences going forward.
Dude, that's awesome. Well, as a fan of yours and a fan of many of the people who work at Nexon OC, I can't wait to see what you guys have been working on, and I'll be waiting for that date sometime in 2020 to come about. I've asked you so many questions, and you've been more than generous with your words and your time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for believing in all this nonsense that I've been doing, and thank you for being a part of my journey. I think you've opened my mind to certainly the complexities of game development behind the scenes in a way that I certainly wasn't aware at Blizzard. Working for a big company like that, you really kind of get put in a lane, and rightly so. These games that a company like Blizzard's making are remarkably complex. You need that kind of focused force to tackle it efficiently in some ways. But one of the things I've been most grateful about my time outside of Blizzard since April is this opportunity to see just how complicated, just how hard and challenging making good decisions on behalf of making games can be. And I think you are someone I would credit for helping kind of pull the mask back and inform me in a lot of ways about that. So I appreciate that. Hopefully our listeners got a good opportunity to hear a little bit about that. I think that's one of the goals I want to have with this podcast, is to help people see more behind the curtains around how decisions get made, or how difficult decisions are undertaken with products that are having a hard time, and with products that aren't. Why are these games successful and these aren't? And at the end of the day, we all just love this industry, myself included, and it's awesome to be a part of it. So anyways, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And guys, if you want to follow Jon or follow up Jon, what's the best way that people can be in touch with you?
Don't follow me. I hide behind the scenes.
Okay.
I'm an operations guy.
They can hunt you down. They can hunt you down on LinkedIn, I'm sure, right?
You can probably find me on LinkedIn, but I stay behind the scenes for the most part. But if you don't mind, actually, I would like to actually thank you not only for having me on and for the opportunity to talk about some of these things, but I think the thing that I'm actually most grateful for in meeting you and talking with you is that you have a passion for game development, but even greater than that, you have a passion for the community that game development can create. And one of the greatest reasons why I believe games need to be made and should be made is that they provide safe spaces for people to express themselves, to meet and understand others, and to have sometimes that safe escape from some of the challenges they may be experiencing in life. And I think that you have a strong passion for content creation and community building, and I believe that it is extremely valuable, it's extremely necessary, and of course I wish you the best throughout your entire journey, and if there's ever anything I can do for you, I will do everything I can, and also I hope I can take advantage of your expertise and knowledge of all this in the future as well.
Man, anytime. You know I'm a big fan of yours, and I want to help in any way, just like I've felt from you. So it's mutual, man. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This is episode 4, Jon Jelinek. We're going to be back with more stuff. I'm not entirely sure when, but stay tuned on Harken Interactive, youtube.com/Harken Interactive. Of course, we're also on Twitter and LinkedIn. I've been throwing some videos up on LinkedIn if you want to check those out. I've been posting the large-scale interviews to YouTube and then kind of chopping up sound bites for Twitter and LinkedIn. So if you want to kind of get small snippets, you can find them there. Let me know how else you want to see this content or if there's anything else you want to see. But thank you. Thank you, Jon.
Thank you, everybody.
We're out.